And we're live. Hey everyone, Joe here for the first Upper Memory Block podcast, Patreon-sponsored group hangout session #1 of awesomeness.
That was a good intro.
Oh, I'm amazing. You see that? See what happens when I work off script? I just do whatever. So there's 4 of us here right now, hoping that 1 or 2 more people are going to show up, but I figured it was time to get rolling. So as I already said, I'm Joe. I'm here. I host the show. You guys know me already. And so let's go around the room and just have everyone give a quick little introduction of yourself. And start with Brian.
I'm Brian. I go by HD Brian on all social medias. I've written it a few times, talked about wanting to send in voice recordings, but never been able to do it. So here I am.
Might as well go hard the first time. Forget about this voice recording. Let's just do it live.
There you go.
Wonderful. Next we have Tomer.
Hi, I'm Tomer Gadol. I'm a software engineer from Israel. Tomer G on Twitter, if anyone wants to look me up. And yeah, let's have some fun. I mean, Trolls was all headbanging earlier in the intro.
I was not.
Yeah, and I'm drinking, so yeah, we should have a fun show.
And of course, the man that needs no introduction on this show, Trolls.
Okay. Hi. I'm Trolls, the Space Quest historian. I've contributed a couple of times to Joe's podcast, and I also do my own stuff as the Space Quest historian, and I also do this little lo-fi podcast with Frederick Olsen called The Backseat Designers. We had a season finale recently, which Joe was very kind enough to participate in. So here I am returning the favor by, spewing my shit all over his. See, I promised I wouldn't.
We got about 2 minutes in there, yeah.
Trolls, you ought to get a bottle of Jennifer or something out there, and we should do it an F-word drinking game. Whenever you spit out the F-word, before you remember.
Joe said he'd have a swear jar for me.
Exactly. I said I'll cancel the Patreon and we'll just run off of Trolls' swear jar.
It'll be huge. I mean, you can move to Mexico for that.
Woo! All right, so Trolls, I will take this opportunity to say that I had a really great time on that Backseat Designer show. It was a lot of fun to talk to all the different people, and especially I think I checked off my bucket list. I got to chat with Scott Murphy.
Ooh, yeah, he was kind enough to show. It was he's a cool guy. He's been in a lot of Space Quest Superfan hangouts. There's a famous one where he actually falls asleep in the middle of it because he was up all night, and so one frame is just him just lolling his head back. It is
wonderful. All right, so I guess since I decided since this is the first group hangout, we would talk about firsts. So we'll have a little discussion here. I came up with a couple questions and. We'll take the conversation where it will go. We don't have to go through the questions or anything like that. I want this to be all free-flowing, but I figured we'd start with something simple. What was the first time you ever encountered gaming at all? And this doesn't have to be DOS. This doesn't have to be DOS or pre-Windows XP gaming era, anything like that. Just the first time you have a memory of gaming.
There were not enough pauses in that. Can you do that again, please?
The DOS and pre-Windows XP gaming era.
There you go.
Okay, now we have Joe on.
Thank you. Oh, that made my evening.
So whoever wants to take it, go nuts.
It's hard to answer that because there's so many early memories, like Apple IIe's at school. Like I think it was even first grade when I first played the brand new to Apple IIe Oregon Trail. Yeah. And I think that was like 85. Also, Showbiz playing like Pac-Man and Q*bert.
Hello.
But I also have a very unique experience. My mom was into some of those basic games. She had a Pong console that you hooked up your TV, and all it played was Pong. And then of course I was big into Nintendo, friends, and playing Nintendo at friends' house and stuff like that.
Awesome. Oh, I remember the Pong console. The Angry Video Game Nerd did an episode on the Pong consoles,
yes.
which was hilarious. And those things barely did anything. I mean, they only worked half the time you plugged them in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just pop in here. Isakami right. Akago has arrived, so that succeeded. We just started, so you haven't missed.
It's working?
Yes, it is. We hear you.
Okay. Took me a little while to figure out how I was actually supposed to join. So.
Yeah, Google Hangouts, right? It's a little. When it works great, but otherwise it gets a little flaky.
Although if you
Yeah,
have an extra light switch or something there, then well, it's all dark, so we can see you, but not that well.
Actually, because and I know this goes out on the audio stream as well. So if you're not watching this right now, Amuro Akago's screen kind of looks like the Big Brother screen from 1984. There's just this huge head, and I'm not ragging on it. My screen's not a pretty sight or anything, but you're like really close to the camera, dude.
I can't put the camera any further away from me, so we're just gonna have to bear with it.
It's okay. You're beautiful.
That's like an HD mustache you got rocking there, dude. It's fantastic.
Yeah, wonderful,
Thanks.
wonderful.
Yeah,
So actually,
for some reason, I had to join the stream through my Gmail or however. There was a little camera icon there. I clicked it, so would have been handy if you told me this in advance, because I've never joined one of these things before.
And I've never run one of them before.
It's okay. It's Google Plus.
It's our first.
Your ass, though. They don't have to do any usability stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well,
just going to use
at least I'm here now, so...
Absolutely.
Yeah. There you go.
Nice to see you, Dan.
Yeah, and actually, why don't you? We went around and did a quick little intro. So why don't you do yours? Just give us a little, 1 or 2 lines about yourself, where we can find you online, if you got any projects, anything like that.
About me, well, I'm here at Akago. I do videos on YouTube, and I have a blog, which I originally started to chronicle my attempt to finish 100 games in my collection before buying any new ones.
And it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Honestly, I've wasted work days just reading through that thing. I mean, boss
Thanks.
comes over, I have to alt-tab out of the window and just get back to work.
Well, don't you have a boss key and whatever it is you're using?
The alt-tab is my boss key. Alt-tabs into an Excel document with nothing in it. I was just starting. No, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. This is not the backseat designers.
It's funny, actually, considering the topic of this Hangout. The most recent video I actually put out on my YouTube was about my very first game that I ever played, which was King's Quest III.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might as well take that and roll with it.
Yeah,
we're like going around the table talking about the first game.
First gaming memories.
Yeah.
So let's roll with that. Tell us a little bit about your first experiences playing King's Quest III.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to kind of steal the spotlight away from you guys or anything, but if that's how we're gonna do this, well,
Oh, Brian was boring us anyway, so.
Not at that.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, I'm probably gonna have to start off by saying that my memories of this period are really, really, really fuzzy. It was a hell of a time to try to piece everything together for my review initially. So, but the earliest I remember is my parents had this IBM PC, and we had a whole bunch of pirated games for it. Like, we used to copy games from our neighbors all the time. So we had a bunch of simple little DOS games. I was born in '87, but we had a bunch of games that were older than that, looking at the dates that they came out. Although they may as well have come out later where we live. I'm in the Netherlands, in case you didn't know. And it's my understanding that games usually came out a bit later here than they did in the rest of the world, or in the US at least. So we had a bunch of games like... I remember we had Pango, we had Paratrooper, Alley Cat.
Oh, yeah.
And, as I mentioned, King's Quest III, which was probably one of the more complex games we owned, and my first exposure to point and click, not real point and click, but graphical
pseudo
adventure
point and
gaming.
click.
Arrow key destroying maze.
Yeah.
Arrow key and keyboard in general destroying, yeah.
Did anyone ever? Because I've watched people play King's Quest 3 and trying to get down that effing mountain. See, that doesn't go in the square jar.
You caught yourself.
People always use the arrow keys, like on the old standard DOS keyboard, where you have the arrow keys under the insert page down sort of thing. People never think to use the numpad,
Yeah,
where you can actually go diagonally.
Yeah, we didn't figure that out ourselves at first either. So we just clumsily used the arrow keys, going up the staircase, and you had to alternate between pushing up, right, up, right, up, right, up, right.
Actually, the funny thing about that is, as far as I can recall, actually on the really early like IBM PCs, at least if I remember correctly, the one I started off with, there actually wasn't an arrow pad to begin with, so you had to use the numpad anyway. I think the arrows were only added in like either the IBM AT or the PS2 or at some point around
could
that.
be.
So yeah,
I
which
think,
is why.
sorry. I think our PC keyboard, the first one we had, already came with the extra arrows. So.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember my really old, before I really got into gaming, Apple II, and I think the Apple II also had like a very condensed. It wasn't the standard 101 key keyboard. And
No, I think it was a very limited keyboard, probably like 64, 65 keys or something on the Apple II. The funny thing about this whole numpad, arrow pad thing is that my early gaming experiences were on an IBM PC that did not have the arrow keys. So actually, even today, on a full keyboard, if I play in a game that supports it, I use the numpad, even to this day. And I probably couldn't even play Doom on the arrow keys. It just doesn't make sense.
You just can't do it.
No. I think I'd rather,
And also, just walking down the stairs, you said it was like up, down, no, down, right, down, right. For me, it was down, right, F5 for save. Down, right, F5. Down,
Every
right,
time you
F5.
didn't fall.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing about King's Quest III, which was kind of both genius and incredibly frustrating, was that timer.
My God.
Yeah. Well, at the time we were just kind of content, just kind of derping around the house for the most part, because me and my brother, we didn't speak a lick of English yet at the time. Especially me, because I was like 3 years old when I first played it, and I'm Dutch, obviously, so English wasn't my first language.
Right, so it was just more a question of mucking around, doing things, and figuring out what you could do in the house without having to figure out kind of the overarching storyline. And I get that. Like, I've gotten stories on the show over and over again from different people, especially when I cover earlier Sierra adventures and parser games. Over and over, people would just say, this is how I learned English. This is how I learned English, because you have to figure out how to type
exactly
things.
how it was for me too.
Yeah, this will come into play when I get my early memory thing out of the way.
Okay, well, how about go for it, Trolls?
Oh, really? Sure. My earliest memory. I was born in 1980 in Denmark, and I still live in Denmark. The accent is the freak side effect of me having been an exchange student in the United States in 1997 to 1998. So I picked up this stupid accent and it won't go away. But people constantly confuse me for being an American, which I think is very nice of them. But anyway, digressing, junior high. My earliest memories were of my dad is an electrical engineer, so there was always a lot of wires and print boards and shit lying around his basement. So he actually built us a tiny little computer with some LED lights on it, which had half a keyboard, like the first all the letters A to M, and he programmed in this kind of Wheel of Fortune type thing. It had a tiny little LED display, one line that was sort of letters would come out, and you'd have to guess the word. But it only had the letters A to M, so it was kind of rudimentary. And then around, I think, 86 or 7, he bought our first computer, which was a Commodore 64, which was huge in Europe. The Commodore 64 was based pretty much, I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm going to say it was pretty much every Scandinavian child in the 80s first computer, if it wasn't the Commodore Amiga. So we had tons of fun with that one. Didn't play much of adventure games on it. I had like the Fantastic Four adventure game. If anyone remembers that,
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
I know of it. Quest Pro featuring the Human Torch and the Thing.
Exactly, and it was
from the same line. It also had Spider-Man and the Hulk.
Yeah, It was weird because it was one of those really early graphic adventure games where there weren't no animation and you couldn't like walk a character around the screen. It was just like a little bit of graphic and then a text parser, and
So
it
more
would
like
not
Mystery House style.
exactly, and
Yeah,
it would
yeah.
not understand anything I would type into it. And the first part of the game was you walk out of a door, and if you go right, you're in a swamp, and you start sinking slowly, and you just go, get out of the swamp. Why won't you get out of the swamp? After this game, and then I just turn off the machine.
It's funny. It's funny you should mention that. I was actually reading up about the Hulk game in that same library yesterday, and that those games are just freaking weird because
I gotta check these out. I've never heard of these before in my life.
yeah, okay. The thing is, you play as the Hulk in one of these, but you don't smash anything.
He's a kinder, gentler Hulk.
Yeah, because apparently if you try to smash anything, the game will tell you, no, you're too nice for that. And there's a scene where you have to get past some giant ants. If you don't do anything to protect yourself, they will crawl into your eyes and kill you. So you have to close your eyes, but then they'll crawl into your nose. So you hold your nose, they'll crawl into your ears.
This is freaky.
That sounds like
Yeah.
a lovely game for kids, especially considering it's trying to not be violent with the smashing stuff.
Oh, interesting side note. Ken Allen and I, Ken's the musician. He was the Sierra musician who did the soundtrack for Space Quest 4 and such. He's a really cool guy. And he came to visit me a year ago or so, and he just off the cuff mentioned that he designed a Ringworld game, and this is going into the future a bit. It was 1994, I think. And just yesterday, or I think this morning, he wrote on Twitter that I think my game was the first that allowed you to switch between characters in a game. And I think actually it was Amiro, if it wasn't someone else who went, oh, there was this game called Big Mansion. I don't know if you've heard of it. But actually, the Fantastic Four game was perhaps the very first one that let you do that, because you could switch between, you start out as the Thing, and then you can switch to the Human Torch, and none of it does jack fuck. But
It does. You vaguely change your avatar, basically.
yeah, or you just change location, and the Human Torch is just standing there watching the Thing slowly drown. It's just done. Anyway, moving on. My dad then bought a 386 IBM PC, which must have been around 87 or 88. And a friend of mine, I was in grade school back then. I don't know, the equivalent of grade school in Denmark. And a friend of mine sat there and played Space Quest 2, which was the first IBM PC game I ever played. The story, briefly digressing, junior high again. The first time I actually saw an IBM PC, I didn't have one. My parents were going to a party with friends, and the type where the adults sit in the living room and drink red wine, and they have to put their kids somewhere. So they stuck me in front of this. I think it might have been a 286, and it had Space Quest 2 on it. And coming from the Commodore 64, which had a lot of hacker intros and pirated games, obviously, where you had this scrolling intro and stuff, I immediately assumed that Space Quest 2 was kind of a tech demo thing. Because I didn't realize that you could walk up the walls and into the spinning thing that takes you into the airlock. So I just spent the entire 4 hours we were there just walking around the first screen, going, "This is nice." I can't actually get out of it. Then later, my dad buys this 386, and my friend from school, we sit there and play Space Quest 2, following a walkthrough that we printed out on this old dot matrix printer, which had the exact phrases that you had to type in. Wow. And of course, like Amirat said, we were Danes. We didn't speak very good English. I was 8 at the time, so that's pretty much how we learned, rub berries on body and stuff. We would go to school and be very proud that we knew the phrase "rub berries on body," and everyone was like, "What does that mean?" That's how you escape swamps, apparently.
Yeah, that's the password. That's the password to escape swamps.
Yes.
Ken sent me.
Yes. So that was my first gaming experience, and of course, piracy. Lots of the only games I owned that legitimately for the Commodore 64 were like 3 or 4 games, and then I had like 100 games on floppy disks that I just copied from friends. Hi,
Yeah.
FBI. How you doing?
Yeah. Another reason we couldn't get anywhere in King's Quest 3 at the time was because we obviously didn't have the manual, so we couldn't
Right.
finish any of the magic spells.
Ah,
Pretty much like Trolls, we had a ton of pirated games and a couple of legit ones. I remember we had, actually, I still have right here in my room the Larry 1, 2, and 3 collection, and we also got King's Quest 4 legitimately.
Cool.
And that was a big thing. Like actually getting a box with a box you could put on the shelf, and it had color manual, and it had floppy disks with printed labels on it instead of somebody's scrawly handwriting.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, how about you, Tomer?
Well, my first gaming experience, actually, I was a bit privileged in that my dad owned an Atari 2600 or VCS, whatever you want to call it, like the original Atari console.
The one with the wood paneling on it?
What's that?
Was it the one with the wood paneling on it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I didn't get the question correctly. The audio was stuttering.
Oh, it had like, I think, because I had an Atari 2600 and it had like a wood panel on it, like it was fake wood.
Oh yeah. It was one of the original ones with the wood paneling. Indeed, the 6-switch version. I think it's literally the original version. I mean, you probably bought it like either in '79 or 1980, whatever. So I was born in 1983. So I think my first gaming experience was with that when I was like 3 years old, probably. That's my earliest memories. And the funny anecdote about that with regards to piracy, which is something that inevitably comes up in any like retro gaming, nostalgia, whatever. Yeah, I mean, and everyone just kind of nods and smiles, and
Like, we know.
Yeah, hi FBI. So the funny thing about that is, I don't know where he got that, but actually a lot of our Atari cartridges were kind of pirated in that we actually had some original cartridges, but we also had this weird-ass cartridge that was actually just a printed circuit board, and you had a socket on it, and we had a cardboard next to it with a whole bunch of I think it's EEPROM chips, and a friend of my dad's would bring a burner with a whole bunch of cartridges every few weeks, and we just basically burn ROMs of pirated games for the VCS. So that was also, I think, my first exposure to game piracy.
That's hardcore.
That is, I was gonna say that is hardcore. I mean, I was sitting there with like 2 disk drives, going, "Yeah, I'm being so awesome." You were sitting there with a fucking soldering iron, going, "Yeah."
Well, maybe my dad was. I don't know. I certainly wasn't at that age, but But then that was my first gaming experience. Then there's we're on first, so there's also my first computer experience, my first PC experience. And they're all, kind of discrete events over a period of about 2 years.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to those too.
Yeah. So
but yeah,
moving
I know.
on.
I know. I asked a bit more about the 2600 because that and the Apple II are probably my earliest memories. And again, because I was born in '81, and I don't know.
Don't tell me I'm the oldest one here.
Well, only very slightly.
Okay.
I was born in '78, so.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Brian wins.
Oh,
Damn.
Ta-da. But so I have a brother that's 5 years older than me, so we had a couple things before I kind of came of age, and the only real memories I have, the only real memories I have of the Atari were Defender. Playing a lot of Defender, and for some reason, looking at the box art and being scared of it, and I'm not sure why. Like I remember there's like a lady on it, there's like a building or something. It's all very vague, and I don't remember why I was afraid of it, but I was. And we had this other game, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was basically a space sim, and it actually had like a little breakout box that had, I think, maybe 9 buttons on it. So you controlled the ship with the Atari joystick, and then you also had this little breakout box where you could I can't remember if it was go to hyperspace or do other things like that.
Sounds like Space War, although I don't know if there's any it's probably a very specific game, might be a variant thereof, but it does sound a lot like Space War.
Yeah, it may very well be. I have no memory of the name of it, and most importantly, we had E.T.
Oh
That
no!
And I played E.T., and even at the time when I was like 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, whatever, however old I was when we still had it, probably more 4 or 5, 3 to 4, kind of a thing. At that time, as a small child, I knew this was a horrible game because I had no idea what to do.
E.T. anecdote. Back in the day when I was still kind of building up my retro collection, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
A while back, I gave most of it away, but I still hold on to a few things. But back when I was still building it, the game was so shitty and was so widely available that someone actually agreed to just, with no like compensation or anything, just basically take the cartridge, put it in the box, take the box, and just mail it to me in Israel, all the way from the United States for no charge, just to get rid of it. It was that bad.
Please take this thing away from me. I will mail it across the world.
Pretty much, yeah. Piece of crap game.
Yeah, and then I guess the other... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you have that Pac-Man abomination?
Oh yeah, that sucked as well.
Yeah.
But combat was awesome.
Combat was great. We didn't have it, but I think I remember playing it.
Yeah, in Atlantis, there's a whole slew of pretty good 2600 games if you're into that sort of.
We didn't have. We probably had more than I remember. The only memories I have were Defender and that space game and ET, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And then my other one really that happened at the same time was the Apple II, and I actually remember my father bringing home the Apple II and setting it all up, and it was all very serious, and I couldn't use it because my father was a programmer.
It's a serious computer.
Very serious business, that Apple II. But eventually we got games for it, and the only game I really remember playing on it was Troll's Tale.
That's
the Sierra game, right?
I have a tale.
Oops, sorry, controls you.
Never mind.
I just asked, that's the Sierra game, right?
Was it by... I thought it was by Broderbund, or at least it was published by Broderbund, I thought. Anyone remember?
That's the graphic adventure game, right?
Yeah. You basically... There wasn't really a goal to the game aside from finding treasures, and every once in a while the troll would randomly show up.
An early Sierra title.
It may have been... Couldn't you play it in a Sierra game?
It's included in the Space Quest 2 VGA remake, yeah.
There you go.
It is a Sierra game. It is a Sierra game. I just did a quick look up on Mobby Games, and yeah.
Well, then that was my first Sierra game. I didn't even know. For some reason, I thought Broderbund made it.
No, they made good games. Well, some of them.
And yeah, it's true. In Space Quest 2 VGA, there's an Easter egg. The unofficial VGA remake that IQ Adventures did, you can play a sort of Troll's Tale parody when you go into Vohal's Asteroid, which is I had never played the original, but I'm pretty sure this is as close to the original as possible. You walk around, pick shit up, and then someone comes along and steals it from you, and then you go around and pick it all up again.
Yep, basically, because I remember because I played the IQ Adventures SQ2 remake, and I very specifically, once I found out you could play Troll's Tale, I said I got to go in and play this because I have to see if it's the way I remember it. And, fine, maybe my memory was a bit flawed, but it seems like it was pretty spot on.
Yeah, so
I had no idea it was even a real game when I played the remake. Like, I just found this weird arcade machine on Vohal's Asteroid, and I was like, what the hell is this? Okay, it's a game inside of the game.
Exactly, that was my reaction too. I was sitting there going, what is this a parody of? And I felt like an idiot when I looked it up online and went, oh.
It's a thing.
Yeah. That happens to me a lot.
Awesome. So I know we've talked about it a bit already, but I guess the next question I was going to talk about was what was the first DOS game you remember explicitly playing, or that you have, relevant. It doesn't need to be the first one, but one that you have, very early specific memories of.
That'd be Alley Cat, definitely.
Yeah. That one.
That game was
beautiful.
Fucking trippy.
Oh yeah, the F word. Cheers.
So I don't really know Alley Cat. Tell me about it a little bit.
It's a very early DOS game from '83, I think. I'll look it up and let you know.
Sure.
It was written by just one guy, whose name
Or IBM, right?
Bill Williams, yeah, for IBM originally. It actually, I think the original version was actually for the Atari 400 XL, and it looks just a little bit different. In some ways, a little bit better, but I prefer the PC version. It was a booter game.
Gorgeous graphics.
What's that?
The PC version had these gorgeous CGA graphics where you go
it was
go into someone's room.
Fantastic for its time.
You have to avoid the dog inside this room, or the broom inside one of the rooms, and there's these very garish purple curtains and stuff. It's absolutely
the broom
gorgeous.
in the room.
The broom in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I was actually right about the year. It's 1983. It was a booter game, which was pretty unusual and very short-lived era for PC gaming. And it was just absolutely a fantastic game. You basically play a cat and you wreak havoc. Like, your whole purpose in life is to eat fish out of aquariums, eat rats out of cheese, drink the dog's milk without waking it up, get rid of spiders and stuff, and how shall I put this? Procreate.
Aha.
Yeah.
I mean,
The thing
whenever
is, yeah.
And it's tough as tits, too. I mean, you start out in the alley, hence the title, The Alley Cat, and you're supposed to jump into people's windows, and every time you jump into a window, unless they throw you out, of course, then you enter this little mini-game thing, and it's either avoid the broom and then knock shit or jump the fishbowl, which, by the way, is the biggest fishbowl I've ever seen. It fills the entire screen.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, you see the fishbowl, it's just a tiny little fishbowl on a table, but when you jump into it, it's like the size of an ocean.
That's awesome.
So it's a very realistic game, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Especially in that cats are assholes.
I know I have one.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but they're assholes. So I mean, the game was, I would probably ahead of its time on several levels. One of the kind of sad things about it is that the author, Bill Williams, had, I think it was cystic fibrosis, and actually died at a very early age, like 30-something. That was probably 10, 15 years ago. And it's a crying shame because he was really, really just massively talented. He did an amazing job in a very early game.
Yeah,
That's a shame.
Brian, were you trying to break in there with something, or?
No, I was going to wait my turn. I was just saying that I was thinking about the CGA graphics when you're talking about those colors, and I pulled up a screenshot, and my first computer was CGA graphics, and that was every game had those 4 colors.
But that whole like magenta, pink, whatever.
Yeah, and then
it's magenta, cyan, red,
Black
and
and
white, I think. Black and white? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or there's alternative palettes which are even more horrible, like muddy green, brown, red, and black. And I mean, it all looked like shit, but the games were great, so who cares?
Well, the thing is, now we look back and it looked like shit, but when we looked at it then, it was awesome. There were colors. Like,
yeah. And I remember for my. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say shit was moving on the screen. You had to follow it. It was
exactly. I remember for my first, for the first 386 we also had a copy of Deluxe Paints, the utility, the graphics utility for that Sierra Online used as far up as I think Gabriel Knight in 1993. It was a really versatile. Amir Hakikaru is yawning at me.
Deluxe Paint was the go-to drawing tool on the Amiga for years and years, and some of the most amazing early graphics done on a computer was done with it. So it has its place in history.
Yeah, and you could boot that thing up in different color modes, because we were fortunate enough that our first computer had a VGA graphics adapter card. But I love to sit around and tinker with it and just boot it up in CGA, and it let you select which CGA palette you wanted. Do you want this nauseating palette or this nauseating palette? And it would go as high as EGA 640 by 480. And I was just sitting there going, I can barely see the pixels. This is awesome.
High res.
Yeah, exactly.
Back in the days, it was 14-inch CRTs.
And it would also boot in either MCGA or VGA, which to my to my untrained eye was exactly the same thing. And I've never, to this day, I think Joe covered it in one of his podcasts what the actual difference is, but that's the first time I ever figured out what the hell is the difference between those two.
If I remember right, I think MCGA was like a Tandy thing.
No, it
Or
was
maybe
an IBM thing from the PS2 stuff.
Oh, right, that's
Okay,
it. Sorry,
I'm
PS2.
I'm the pedant history buff in the audience, so just shut me up if I ramble.
No, we need you. We need you.
It's very important. See, when I go on the show and I say all this stuff and it's like very accurate or whatever, that's because I've gone somewhere and I've read it and I checked it somewhere else. Like I don't know most of this stuff off the top of my head, so please.
But you do know the definition to most genres ever, and I cannot recount how many times you've gone, well, an adventure game is...
And no one's ever called me out on those, so I'm glad. I guess I'm being somewhat accurate at least.
Oh, they're working.
Yeah. How about you,
It
Brian?
sounded accurate enough to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I occasionally find like small things to nitpick on your show, but it's generally just really well researched. So I mean, if someone like Jim Leonard or myself tells you that they only found a few points to nitpick on, then that's a pretty high praise, I guess.
Well, I thank you very much.
Oh, and speaking of well-researched episodes, the episode you did on early access software games was fantastic because I remember one of the early games I had for the 386 was Lynx 386.
Yes.
Which would boot up, and this was before we got a sound card, so we only had the PC speaker, and it would boot up and it would play digital sound. And I was like, oh my god, where's this coming from? I had no idea what the hell real sound was. All I knew was that it made the computer stutter as hell. And I had no idea how it worked. And then your show explains to me what the hell real sound actually was. And it was basically, the Commodore 64, if you like really squeezed it, you could also get digital sound out of the SID chip. Mm-hmm. But, for the PC speaker, I was just to complete the train of thought, at the time I also had, delusions that I would one day be a musician. So I'd seen my friend's older brother tinker around with his Amiga, and he had what's it called, Fast Tracker or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Pro Tracker, probably.
Pro Tracker, yeah. And the equivalent on the IBM PC, and one that I got for the 386, was Scream Tracker by Future Crew. Scream Tracker 2, actually.
Yeah.
And I sat around and diddled with that a lot. And at the time, only had a PC speaker, and it had 4 channels of digital audio that you could sit and tinker around with. And it sounded atrocious. And especially after I got my first sound card, I would load up some of the modules I'd done on the PC speaker and just go, what the fuck is this noise? But it sounded good on the PC speaker, or, well, somewhat good.
Awesome. Yeah, but since you mentioned it, we actually also had another golf game by Access called World Class Leaderboard. Of course, I didn't know the title at the time. I always just called it Golf.
Golf, right.
But I distinctly remember it had some good real sound voice samples as well. And I always got a chuckle out of hearing the guy go, looks like he hit the tree, Jim. Whenever you hit a ball against the tree.
In terms of digital sound, I think the earliest game with digital sound I've ever played, I was originally going to say Mach 3 by Lauricio on the PC, but I think it was actually before that. It was Barbarian, aka Death Sword, where as it loads up, it goes Barbarian, and that's pretty much it, because, well, the game was the good kind of shitty,
right?
Basically shitty.
So what's the good kind of shitty?
The kind that it's shitty, but a guilty pleasure. Okay, it's the gamer's version of guilty pleasure. It's like watching Friends.
Right.
The Orion Conspiracy is a guilty pleasure.
There you go. So, hey, I really love playing Euro Truck Simulator 2 right now, so that's my guilty pleasure. I like driving a truck.
Simulator 2014 is my bag.
But I remember Barbarian because, like you said, it had digital speech, and I had the C64 version. And for those of you who don't know, Barbarian is the first controversial video game of all time because it was one of those violent games where you could lob somebody's head off, and then this little dwarf dude in a frog costume would come in and kick his head off the screen. But
Awesome.
the Commodore 64 version also had Barbarian, the intro, but it was more like Barbarian or something.
Oh, well, the PC kind of sounded like that as well, I think.
See, that always reminded me of Blades of Steel on the NES. You'd start it up and it would be like, Blades of Steel.
And it was amazing. My Nintendo was talking to me.
Yeah, that was incredible. I think that's the first time I ever had heard my Nintendo talk to me.
Critical interrupt. Has anyone else here had Atom, the demo Atom on the PC back in the day? We're talking like 1988 IBM PC XT, a small executable that you'd run and it'd play part of that song. I don't remember what the song's name is, but the line is "Forever and ever you'll stay in my heart, and I will love you."
I never had that demo.
Is that spelled A-D-E-M?
Pardon?
Nope, never heard of it.
Okay.
That's
no, Atom, like
A-M?
A-T-O-M.
A-T-O-M.
Like an
Yeah.
atom.
Yeah, I can't
No,
remember.
don't think
which
I've ever heard of
they
that
put
one.
That out. Okay, look it up if you have the time. It's an interesting bit of history, and it's got.
But since you mentioned, sorry, since you mentioned Mach 3 earlier, I actually played that game a lot as well as a kid, and that game had the awesomest intro theme music I'd ever heard at the time. Like you had this really
amazing.
it was kind of a short, but it's really rocking kind of intro theme through the PC speaker, like guitars and everything.
I'm gonna post a link to YouTube so you can actually hear it if you like.
Cool.
I think, yeah, here it is, and it's a very short sample on a loop, like it's 10-15 seconds or something like that, and it loops over and over again. But for the time, that was just brilliant. That was just awesome.
Oh yeah, this is rocking.
I've wanted to hear a remix of that song, or a remix or a cover or whatever of that song for the longest time, but no one's ever made one.
Joe, when you do the audio version, you should just pause the show here and just play it, because nobody on the stream can hear this right now. As far as I know, you can't play YouTube videos on Hangouts. But I also remember this tune. It was really, that was cool. That and the Lynx 386 theme music, which I think they stole, by the way. I don't know.
And one I discovered in recent. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Another one I discovered in recent years for the Atari ST, a game called Starglider, had another short kind of intro loop where it would just go Starglider.
It's
Over
like
and over
Daytona,
again.
except in the 80s.
That is amazing.
Oh, and
So,
just to finish
It's
up,
stuff like that that really makes me regret missing out on all the other home computers and systems that were out at the time. I only ever had PC when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that. I developed a crush on alternative platforms, and especially the Amiga, years and years later. And actually, it took me. Amigas were damn rare in Israel. Hardly anyone had them, and it took me 5 years from when I was about 11 to actually manage to find one to add to my collection in Israel. And then it took me 2 months, and we're talking, what is it, 1998 or 9, so a lot of the stuff that you can find today just wasn't around back then. I mean, even if you had internet access. It took me over 2 months to write some sort of hackish serial file transfer thing in Commodore BASIC to get a driver for the version of the OS that I had that could read a disk image in ADF format and then just regenerate it on the Amiga as a proper disk. And then I could get a newer OS. I kind of bootstrapped through it. It took me 2 months. It was worth every frickin' minute.
Well, I guess that's the challenge.
Dedication.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge, right? Because you can't just go, oh, I need this version of the OS. Let me go download it and put it on a disk and install it.
Nowadays you can. Nowadays it's easy.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you have the money.
Amiga is definitely the system I would want to own in the present day.
Yeah, like I never had one, and I don't even think, all my friends all had PCs as well, but whenever now I go back and I do research on something, and I see like, the PC version, and then I see the Amiga version just looks like way more awesome.
That's kind of ironic, considering
it had 32 colors. Sorry. Most of the old IBM PC games of at least the mid to late 80s had EGA graphics, if that, at 16 colors, and the Amiga versions always had 32 colors.
Mhm.
So you'd sit there and go, "Oh, this looks so much better." Oh, but then I have to pilot it with a joystick if I don't have an Amiga mouse. So
Right.
that's the one-up that the PC always had. And also, I remember Fate of Atlantis coming out for the PC, the early 90s. What was it, 93 or something?
Something
94?
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember playing it on the PC and going, "This is awesome." And then I look at the reviews for the Amiga version, and everyone just goes, "Well, the game is very pretty, but my God, it slows down a lot." And apparently, that was around the time LucasArts realized, "Dude, we can't do Amiga versions for our games anymore. It just doesn't work." And it came on like 20 floppy disks or something.
Right.
Oh God. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I
in
remember
92,
that.
yeah, sorry, go
Sierra.
ahead. I'm right.
Sorry. Yeah. I keep interrupting people by unintentionally. Anyway, Sierra had a lot of problems porting their games to Amiga as well, from what I had heard. Like, I don't think King's Quest V even ever came out on that system. King's Quest 6, they had to farm out to Revolution to port it to Amiga.
You need to put things in the correct historical perspective. Fate of Atlantis came out in '92. If I remember correctly, it required a 286 with VGA graphics. Amigas basically had the same kind of hardware platform from '85 when the first one came out till '92, I think, when the AGA architecture was put forth, and Commodore went out of business in '94. So it was a pretty short-lived platform, and especially if you can contrast Amiga ports to PC games or PC ports in the late 80s, typically Amiga is just so much more advanced that it's not even funny to do the comparison. And in the early 90s, PCs were finally starting to catch up. So, from that point on, it's fair to say that, Amiga ports in the early to mid 90s started sucking ass because, well, they did. I mean,
the machine wasn't moving forward. So, the technology platform wasn't there.
Yeah, but if you want to take a canonical example, contrast Defender of the Crown on PC, which is a 1986 game, and I think actually the PC version came out later in 1987. But you compare it to the Amiga version, it's just worlds apart, and that's actually one of the aspects of my early gaming memories was. One of our neighbors had an Amiga, and it was the only one I've ever seen in Israel till I was like 16. So I was a bit lucky to have experienced it. And I always had, up until like 93, with a powerful 386 and VGA and Sound Blaster and CD-ROM. Up until that point, I had a massive kind of inferiority complex with regards to PC games because. Let's face it, they were technically inferior because you just couldn't do as much with the platform. But yeah, I mean, early Amiga games were just absolutely amazing technically.
I had Defender of the Crown for the Commodore 64, and it looked like ass as well. I've seen the PC version. Yeah. It probably looks the most ass, and the music was also ass. But the Commodore 64 had one thing that. The Commodore 64 had one thing that all the others didn't have, and it was the SID chip, the SID chip. So the music for the Defender of the Crown on the Commodore 64 was just so amazingly good.
I would agree with you conceptually because I love the SID chip and I love a lot of C64 music, but Defender of the Crown specifically. If you want to hear what the Amiga version sounded like, let me post you a link to that so you can.
Oh, I've heard it. I've heard it.
It's
it is good.
Of what the C64 could do back in the day.
They still did the best job they could on the PC version with the 16 colors and all. I mean, it still looks decent enough.
Actually, there was a CGA 4-color and an EGA 16-color version, and the EGA version. To my eyes, actually looks not as good comparatively. Like, it gives you more color, but it also makes the fact that it doesn't look as good as the original version that much more obvious. So I prefer the original.
Yeah, but
$4
they
CGA.
still worked with what they had, so
Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously.
absolutely. I mean, that was a lot of the point during all of this time is, you know, you worked with the hardware that you had, and a lot of it was unfortunately limited. But yeah, so, and I guess moving on, we started mentioning of CD-ROMs, so let's jump a little bit forward in time and talk about our first experience with
Hey, Joe.
Yo.
Can I, real quick, I mean, with 5 people here, it's hard to...
Yeah,
know
sure,
when to
go
jump
ahead,
in.
yeah,
I didn't,
absolutely.
I didn't actually get to talk about my first PC game, and nobody's brought this up yet, but,
Please do.
you know, when my mom got the first PC was in 86, and I'd found shareware discs at random, like, flea markets and stuff where they, you know, kind of had printed labels, and they were all, you know, all that whole shareware revolution that happened. And a lot of the first games I played all were ASCII graphics, where it had the ASCII smiley face character, and you'd go around a maze or do something, but they were all looked the same, but all played very different. But because they're all based on ASCII, and I hadn't realized that wasn't real graphics; it was just extended text codes. But I
Doesn't
grew up.
that sort of
Go ahead.
predate shareware, though?
Oh, I'm sure it did, but I didn't get them. I didn't know anything about them until they showed up on racks, and, you know, it was $1 for the disc. It was like, okay, I'll take that. And you know what? Maybe they weren't shareware. I don't think they were the shareware like Apogee had at the time. You know, they really revolutionized the shareware where you actually buy the additional chapters. But leading into Apogee, that was the first game I'd played that really made me feel like this computer is something I could play with. I always wanted a Nintendo as a kid. My mom never bought one. I was the wannabe Nintendo kid. None of these PC games felt like Nintendo games. They were games, sure, but they just didn't, you know, no scrolling, no shooting, no jumping on Goombas, none of that stuff.
Right.
And then when I got the Commander Keen disc, and at the time I didn't realize that it was actually episode 4. You know, I went back and played the first 3 episodes, and they were a lot more inferior. But Commander Keen felt like a game you'd play on a Nintendo.
Yeah.
This was a video game. Like, okay, now I can play video games, and that's where I actually first started then wanting to put money in. It was a CGA computer, had no audio, you know, just the PC speaker. So that's where I got my Sound Blaster 64 was for Commander Keen.
There you go.
And it, you know, it hurt my ears on the PC speaker. So hearing it on you know, that Sound Blaster 16, yeah. You know, it sounded so much better, and then I got my first VGA graphics card because of that. You know, I was playing it in those four colors, and then upgrading to VGA for Commander Keen and seeing like how, like, holy cow, there's 16 colors now, and it looks so different.
You're probably the only person I've ever met who upgraded to a proper sound card before upgrading from CGA.
Well, because my eyes didn't hurt looking at the 4 colors, my ears hurt. I mean, if you go back and try listening to those Commander Keen PC speaker sounds, those
Oh yeah, it should.
non-stop.
It hurts.
Yeah, it's,
Like, no, I couldn't do it. And again, Nintendo, I'm used to, you know, my friends having games where you hear the good crisp sounds, so I needed to get better sound first. And I was a kid, so I mean, I was saving lawnmower money and stuff like that. So, and it was a monster.
And another thing about the PC speaker was it had no volume control, at least not what it
oh
Exactly.
God, yeah.
So
The volume
if you were,
control was the pillow I put on it.
So
exactly, because if you're a kid and you sit around at 2 a.m., it's a school night, you're supposed to be asleep, and you just want to fucking play a game, and you sit there and go, where's the sound off? It's either sound off or full blast. You know, I used to take off the cabinet and try to look for a volume knob or something, and just, you know, eventually I resorted to just plucking out wires from the speaker thing, and then I sort of broke it, and yeah.
hardware anecdote is that you could actually add a very simple rheostat as a volume control to PCs, and at least in Israel, actually, a lot of people did that. I think we did as well. So anyone with like rudimentary electronics could pull it off, and a lot of people
That's
did.
interesting.
Well, my dad was an electrical engineer, but I think he purposely did not put in a volume control on
He wanted to know when you were staying up too late.
Exactly.
And after
Because
My dad actually
Well, that's
custom modded our PC to have a little flip switch so you could actually turn the speaker on or off.
fair enough.
Yeah,
Same concept.
that's good enough.
It's annoyance versus responsible parenthood. The age-old conflict, especially for parents of kids growing up in the 80s with early computers.
Well, I guess it'd be the same as if you were trying to get on the BBS late at night and you didn't realize you could turn off the modem speaker from the init string, and the handshake noise was just deafening.
What's that? No, Dad, I'm just going to sleep.
I'm not trying to download a picture of Cindy Crawford in her underwear. I promise.
in EGA.
In EGA.
Mutant Cindy Crawford. Just preempting the first sound card discussion that we're probably going to have. Eventually, my dad sort of came around because when I got my first Sound Blaster 16, I think it was, he actually hooked it up to my little 80s Toshiba stereo. And I would, first of all, the sound was so much better than anything I could ever imagine. I had these little tiny speakers, of course, and they okay, now I've got ad-lib sound and I've got digital sound effects. It all sounds very good. But then he wired them up so I could put them into my stereo, and I would actually take two chairs and put them on either side of me and just put my speakers, which were like this, trying to get it into frame here, like really
nice, like bookshelf type. Yeah.
Yeah. And just lean them up against the backrest of the chairs on either side of me and just sit there like these. It looked like I was wearing like gigantic headphones. And he would come into the room and just go, "Oh, my son must be in there somewhere."
amongst the speakers. Well, let's go into that talk then, since Trolls brought us there. So for you it was an ad lib.
No, it was a Sound Blaster 16, and at that point I had my. I'm not sure what the English thing is. I know this sounds like I'm digressing a lot, but in Catholicism there's something called confirmation, where you're like 13 years old and you become a man and you have this big party and stuff. We're not Catholics or anything, but there's a Danish tradition that around the age of 13 you have this big ass party and all your friends, and you get these huge ass presents. And my present was a 486 DX2 with 66 megahertz and 8 megabytes of RAM. Oh my god, I love this thing so much.
That was my favorite gaming PC.
So it's like a Danish bar mitzvah. You got a 486 for your Danish bar mitzvah.
Kind of, but with no religious connotation. Well, for some, because some people, it is kind of a religious thing, because some school kids get sent off to church in the morning and they have like 2 hours of church stuff, and then but for atheist kids like me, we would just stay home from school and sleep in, and then we'd have a big ass party anyway. So I saw no reason to get religious just because I wanted a gaming computer. Although I would gladly have. But anyway, it also had a Sound Blaster 16 card. Which was amazing, and that's what my dad wired up to the speakers. And I remember my dad, being a technology nerd, having bought our first computers and such, he also came into the room and started tinkering around with it. And this is going to sound really weird, but the first game we sat around and tried to get running with the sound card and everything was the VGA remake of Leisure Suit Larry 1. So there I am playing a soft porn game with my dad, going, wait, that fart sound, was that ad-lib or was that Sound Blaster? And we sit there and going, oh wait, that's a digital sound, that's not yeah. And he'd have to explain to me what a lubber was, because years later I figure out that it's a racist joke on Aldo's part, where it's the immigrant clerk at the convenience store trying to say rubber, but it says lubber. So for years I went around going, oh, a lubber. Oh, right.
Is that what it is? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I figured out what it's supposed to be, and actually it's embarrassing because it took me years and years and years. I was probably like 16 when I replayed Larry and finally figured it out.
Like, oh, I get a lot of this now.
There was a lot of that game I didn't get, and I was convinced there was a cheat code for turning off the bouncing censored bar when you get with the prostitute at the beginning of the game. There wasn't.
Even if there was, it really wouldn't have shown you very much.
No. But anyway, that was my first audio card
version, perhaps, but
no, you couldn't turn it off in any version.
No.
Anyway, that was my first sound card. And then of course the tracker music I was doing, I was up to Scream Tracker 3 at this point and had 16 channels at all of this going all at the same time, and that was so much fun.
So Joe, you mentioned CD-ROMs a bit earlier. You were kind of leading off the question about that, and we sort of digressed and.
Oh, so we could go to CD-ROMs, or let's stay on sound cards.
No, it's related, which is exactly why I'm bringing it up. So,
go for it.
what happened in my case was actually I mean, my family was anything but wealthy for most of my early life, and what happened was when I was, I think it was 9 or 10, my brother had his bar mitzvah, like an actual bar mitzvah, and you get a big ass party, but more importantly, instead of presents, as is very Jewish in tradition, you typically just get money, and it piles up, and it can actually be quite a bit of money. So what happened was, yeah, no, it's okay. We get to make those jokes. I only want yeah. So with regards to what my brother did is he bought a 386, and up until that point, and we're talking 1993 here, we had that ancient 8088 clone. Which was, it was pretty ancient when we bought it in '89. So he bought a 386, and he used up the rest of the money to actually add a what was then called the Creative Multimedia Kit.
Correct.
Which was,
this I recall.
Yeah, it was a very, very early kit where you actually got a Sound Blaster Pro 2.0, I think, in our case, a single-speed CD-ROM with Caddy, which nowadays is unheard of, and a whole bunch of like software and titles and stuff. And that was awesome. And funnily enough, we also sort of got Windows 3.1, I think, at the time, and a lot of the software was for that, for whatever reason. And one day I was just basically screwing around with the machine and found out accidentally how to install the sound system drivers on Windows, and suddenly Windows had sound. And that was my first PC sound card, and the first game I played with that sound card was the CD-ROM version of Jones in the Fast Lane.
Nice.
So, going from playing Jones in Fast Lane with friends on a PC speaker who had better computers than we did, to playing an actual talkie version of Jones in the Fast Lane with proper, ad-lib music and proper sound effects and Digitized sounds, that was just, such a quantum leap. The memory is kind of burned in me. So that was an awesome machine.
I've played Jones on the Fast Lane more times than I can remember, and it was always the disc version. I've never played the CD-ROM version.
It's terrific.
I'm sure it is. A lot of Sierra employees lent their voices to that, and also and also their likenesses. The guy at the bank, I think, is Mark Crow, the graphics designer from Space Quest. So.
Makes sense. Would you like some secret sauce with that?
And that game also taught me what garnish means, because every once in a while, if you forget to pay your rent, when you go to work, it will go, your landlord garnished some of your wages.
Some of your wages.
And here comes the swear jar. I would just sit there going, fuck you, buddy, don't take it.
Oh, yes. So I learned garnish and also endive, actually. I learned what Belgian endive is from Jones and Fast Lane.
Not just fun, but educational.
Cheers.
Wonderful.
I never played that game until a couple of years ago after I saw Lord Cat play it.
Oh, it's fun. Hey, sound card memories, anyone? What was
the
first
a
time?
lot of them.
Oh, but the first one, the very, very first one.
The first
mine was a fart sound in Leisure Suit Larry 1, and I will remember that till the day I die. Larry rips a fart, and he's going, wow, that was an actual fart. And me and my dad would just sit there going, wow, he farted. So what were yours?
Very first sound was the Windows 3.1 startup sound, which is actually pathetic, but there you are.
No, that's awesome.
Ta-da!
I'll allow it.
I mean, for me it was, and actually mine's even a little bit related to yours, Trolls. I think I got my first sound card, which was, I think I talked about this on the show once. It was called a Sound Wonder, and it was it was a Sound Blaster emulator. It was kind of a knockoff Sound Blaster card, and I got it on the day of my brother's confirmation, and I'm not sure why they. There is a thing called a confirmation.
Like Canadian bar mitzvah?
Basically, it's the Catholic bar mitzvah. And yeah, so I'm not sure why it worked out this way. I can't believe it was either my brothers or my cousins or something like that. But it was not an event for me. But we got this thing that day, and all I wanted to do was not go to the rest of this party. I wanted to go home and install this sound card. And the first game I played on it was probably Wing Commander 1. And I think the first memory of sound I have coming out of it was that Wing Commander 1 intro where you have like the orchestra and the conductor comes and he's like tuk, 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 and you hear the tuk 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 and then the music starts and I was like, oh my god. My computer shouldn't be able to sound like this. And there were a lot of memories like that with regard to Wing Commander for me, where my computer shouldn't be able to sound like this. My computer shouldn't be able to look like this because the game looked and sounded so good at the time. Yeah. How are you guys? Brian, Tomer?
Commander Keen, like I said.
Yeah, there you go. That's true, yeah. Okay, so then let's roll into... oops, sorry, we got more? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I some sound card memories thingy yet.
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so, well, we actually went from PC Speaker straight to Sound Blaster. I think our first sound card may have been a Sound Blaster 2. Yeah, it was definitely Sound Blaster 2, not a Pro. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that in itself was a pretty big leap, because going from the bleeps and bloops of PC Speaker to actually having music in Lemmings was a pretty big step.
Oh yes.
Was there digital sound in Lemmings? I can't remember.
Yeah, they went.
Oh right. And the explosions when you hit the Armageddon button.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there definitely was. That was actually my first YouTube video was Lemmings, so that's why I remember that.
I see.
Just to before
wasn't sure if the original PC wasn't sure if the original PC version actually had the oh no voices and whatnot, but now that you mentioned it, I don't think it did.
Well, maybe it didn't, because I know I played the Windows version when I played through it, so that's my memory of Lemmings.
Probably 5 years after or something, right?
I remember there was this hacker group who made a Lemmings parody called Lamers, where instead of saving the Lemmings, or the Lamers in this case, your cursor was a crosshair, and every time you click the mouse button, it would just go like a machine gun, and your goal was to just shoot all their asses before they could reach the exit. They would actually build their own way to the exit, like in Lemmings. And
that's
I actually thought
pretty awesome.
That was a more fun game than the actual Lemmings game.
It was like the Dungeon Keeper version of Lemmings. You're the bad, you're the world trying to kill them.
Yep, exactly.
Just to add an anecdote before we, I don't know, wrap up the question, I guess. A second distinct memory of sound cards is actually moving up to Sound Blaster AWE32 in '96, and that was my first. That was my first experience with wavetable MIDI of any sort, and I remember firing up Duke 3D after I first figured out that there's an actual difference in how you configure it. For general MIDI between the Sound Blaster 16 AWE, because for 16 you wouldn't want general MIDI, and I was so ridiculously blown away by how much better. I mean, it was the same music, it's the same game that I knew really, really well. I'm just talking title music here, right? The first 5 seconds, and yeah, that was also a very distinct memory that I carry with me, because I was just utterly blown away.
Oh yeah, I mean, I totally remember that, just because I think I can't remember if I jumped from a 16 to an AWE32 or to an AWE64, but basically...
same thing, really.
Yeah, but when that happened, basically, like, to me, at that time, it felt like it was real instruments that were playing the music. Like, it didn't sound like MIDI to me anymore.
I have a story to add to that one, because I had a Sound Blaster 16 for a very, very long time, and I actually can't remember what the successor was, because I kind of latched onto that Sound Blaster 16 because, again, delusions of being a musician. I went into a music store, and I had gotten the 7th guest, and we're going to probably get into that when we get to the CD-ROM bit.
Yeah.
on the second CD of The Seventh Guest, there was an audio track where they would play the game's soundtrack through a Roland sound canvas, and it just sounded like God was coming out of my speakers. It was like, whoa, like a computer can do that. So I went into this this music store. And I mean music store, like guitars, amps, and stuff like that. And I went, do you guys have a MIDI keyboard and anything that resembles a Roland sound canvas? And the dude behind the counter goes, all right, here's a MIDI keyboard. And we have this daughter board, Roland sound canvas daughter board. And for those who don't know...
the LAPC1 or whatever?
Yeah, no, it was an actual Roland sound canvas thing, and the daughter board is kind of this mutant add-on that you plug onto the Sound Blaster 16, and it will actually play Roland sound canvas stuff, but it didn't come with all the drivers. So so I could compose music in Musicator using my little MIDI keyboard, and it would sound fantastic. But whenever I tried to boot up like a Sierra game or a LucasArts game, all the sound fonts and stuff would sound completely horrible, because the sound canvas had like a million different sound fonts, orchestral and stuff, but it would only play the general MIDI sound fonts, and it would sound atrocious. So the only thing that actually sounded good was The Seventh Guest, because it used the standard general MIDI timbers.
Right.
So I still have that daughter board lying around here somewhere, and it really does look like a Pop-Tart sandwich on top of your Sound Blaster 16.
No, that's an awesome. That's basically you can hook it up to any contemporary song card with a wavetable header,
right.
And it'll work. And that's an awesome daughter board. I mean, if I had one or could afford one back in the day, I would be in bliss. It took me years to come up with an MT32, and that's not even general MIDI per se on eBay. Yeah, so
did anyone have an MT32 back in the day?
Back in the day, no. Only now.
No.
This
Unfortunately,
huge Whopper kind of it looked like the Whopper from War Games, this huge VCR-like machine.
It's honestly I have.
Sorry.
Overall, I have an MT32 and an SC55 downstairs. Right now, sitting next to each other, and those are my favorite pieces of hardware that I have ever owned in my life. I love those things.
Well, call me toast because I'm jelly.
And actually, like I said, eBay
toast because I'm jelly. Gotta fuck that up.
Swear jar.
It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. So
what I wanted to say, by the way, Trolls, you keep kind of criticizing your own musical skills, but from what I've heard, your stuff was actually pretty good, in my opinion. Just saying.
Oh, thanks. Thanks a lot. I did do a couple of soundtracks for Space Quest fan games, which were made in click and play, and those are kind of the MIDI stuff that I was doing on the MIDI keyboard, and it was, my school had like a proper Roland sound canvas, and I would sit in the music room until 5 o'clock on school days. They would just sort of let me into the music room. I don't know. They trusted me apparently, and that's when I got the idea. But I'm gonna get myself one of these. But thanks. Anyway, for my money, it sounds horrible. But
but that's always how these things work,
just so
right?
we're clear, didn't you also used to go by Alchemy?
Yep, I've actually got some. At some point, I decided to try and actually compose music for real. I went from the tracker to MIDI stuff, and then I tried combining the two, and then I tried picking up a guitar, and I still have a guitar, and it only has 2 strings on it because I can't play for shit. So it's tuned like the bottom string is tuned to a D instead of an E, and then the second string is tuned to an A. So I can just do power chords and go. That's as far as I've gotten.
Okay.
Now I just don't have time to do music.
I heard your remix of the Space Quest 4 Supercomputer Countdown way back, and I actually really like that one. Just
thanks. Thanks a lot.
Anyway,
favorite piece of music ever.
Conversation. So, what were we talking about?
As far as sound, I did a cover once of the Last Ninja 2 Central Park theme for the Commodore 64. If anyone out there sitting there going, these losers talking about the Commodore 64 having great sound, all I can hear is bleeps and bloops. Get out the swear jar again. Fuck you people. Load up Last Ninja 2.
Swear jar up.
If you've ever wanted to hear an old style 80s computer rock your socks off, listen to that soundtrack. I still have it on my phone. I listen to it all the time. It is great.
And for those of you listening,
music.
Sorry, try again.
Yeah. You guys got a little.
For those of you listening without video, I'm playing a very one-sided drinking game where every time Troll says the F word, I take a drink of sake. I think I'm about half bottle in by now. So
my beer's already empty, so.
Get another one.
And I don't have anything to drink.
I ran out of cola too. Amira, you were saying something while Tommy was trying to say something.
Oh yeah, I said no disrespect. I like the C64 music as well.
Oh yeah, me too. Obviously, I
yeah,
love that.
What I've heard of it on YouTube and stuff.
You've got to appreciate things for what they were and what they were capable of doing. I mean, you compare it to music today. Obviously, yeah, it sounds like crap because you couldn't do it, but.
Oh, and
it still has a style all its own that you can appreciate
exactly.
in that sense.
Yeah.
And just to wrap that thing up, if anyone actually wants to listen to the crap I've done, you can go to alchemydk.bandcamp.com and have a swear jar handy. That's all I'm gonna say.
Fuck.
There you go. All right, so I got two more questions that I want to get through because I think they're interesting. So let's. We started talking about CD-ROMs a little bit, but let's be a little more specific about your first CD-ROM game, or the first one that you cared about. Yep, go ahead.
Seventh Guest podcast was one of my favorites because that was a good memory. I had a teacher that taught math, and when our school got computers, she was just basically forced to teach computer science and knew nothing about it. And actually went to her house to help her with something with her computer, and
there's a sexy story in there somewhere.
Well, you'd think there would be, but no, she was just a sweet old lady who knew nothing about computers, so I helped her get a computer set up.
Be called Mrs. Robinson.
And she had a CD-ROM in this computer that she bought, and it had come with Seventh Guest, so I fired up, what is this? Fired up the Seventh Guest game, and I was fascinated. Just the idea of exploring the mansion. The puzzles were the roadblock for me to exploring the mansion. That's what I wanted to see, was what looked like, of course, there was full motion video, but it looked to me like I was walking through this mansion.
It was real life, right?
Yeah, and that's what got me to want to get a CD-ROM. But then the CD-ROM I got came with Myst. So Myst actually became my. And I had gotten sick where I was bedridden for like 2 weeks, and I laid my PC monitor sideways on my nightstand and played Myst with the mouse on my lap, and that's what I did for the 2 weeks I was sick. Was just laid there with the monitor sideways, not being able to move, but still playing Myst. I loved it.
I think it's actually funny. It actually took me a really long time to actually play Myst. I didn't play it when it first came out. And my reasoning was dumb because I had a bunch of friends, and one guy we knew had a Mac, and all he could talk about was Myst and how awesome Myst was. And so to me, I'm like, Myst is a Mac game. I don't want to play that. And then later on, I played it, and it is what it is. But yeah.
I remember getting this is skipping ahead a bit, but I remember getting the Space Quest collection in must have been '94 or '95 or something on CD-ROM.
Blue Box one or whatever, or
yeah, the not the first one on probably the first one on CD actually. The one that had 1 through 5 on it on a single CD. And I remember getting, and I'm doing air quotes here, sick for a couple of days playing through that one. My first CD-ROM drive was an old clamshell drive, if anyone can remember those. It wasn't like what Tomer was saying earlier, where it wasn't the one where you put the CD into this little docking thing and then shove it into the drive. This was one where you would pull the drive out of the cabinet, and then it would open up like a clamshell, and you would put in the CD and then close the clamshell and then shove it back into the machine.
I've ever seen one of those.
Oh, I've seen one.
Weird.
They're weird, but they're
It was weird, and it was a single speed drive. And I remember the first game I bought. This was with my 48060 X6 66 megahertz thing. The first game I bought was Day of the Tentacle, because I played the disc version, and I thought I thought it was so amazing that there were voices in the intro and outro. Which were like low-grade 8-bit because it was the disc version, but it had voices, and I thought, wow.
But it was actually decent voice acting on Day of the Tentacle. It was a really, really well done.
LucasArts were amazing with that, but the story is that with a single-speed drive, Day of the Tentacle ran like shit. It was terrible because it kind of required a double speed drive. So whenever they would have like animation, like in the intro, the car kind of swerves and they pick up a cow and it goes through like a fence or something, and it would just stutter. Like the car would just move like an increment a second.
So what you're saying is that it looks sort of like Google Hangouts looks now.
Right now.
Yep, exactly. So I really had to save up to get a double speed drive. And the double speed drive was when I really started getting into my whole thing about annoying people online, because that's about when the internet got around. This is like 94, 95. My dad got his first modem, of course. So I would start mail ordering CD-ROMs. And one of the first ones was, of course, there was Day of the Tentacle, and then there was Beneath the Steel Sky and the Space Quest Collection. I ordered those pretty much at the same time, and those, of course, became the obsessions I am now somewhat infamous for. So the CD-ROM, yeah.
CD-ROM made you the man you are today.
Yes, and then of course the Seventh Guest. And watch, and you're absolutely right, Brian. The puzzles were just sort of cock blocking what I really wanted to do, which was to just walk around and look at the FM.
Swear box, ahoy!
Oh, cock blocking is a swear word? I'm sorry.
That was debatable. That was debatable.
Yeah.
Tomer just wanted to have a drink.
All right. Shit. Fuck. Drink.
There you go.
Oh man, I can't pour it fast enough. Come on.
All right, I'm done.
All right, who else got CD-ROM stories?
Me?
Well, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's actually kind of blurry and kind of interesting at the same time, but I remember the first CD-ROM we got, I'm pretty sure it was a double speed, and the first game that my parents got with it was King's Quest V, actually.
Ooh, Josh Mendoza.
The thing is, I didn't actually play it at the time. You know why? Because Sierra Games terrified me as a kid.
Don't
that
lie.
game
it was
especially.
Cedric. It was Cedric, wasn't it?
Well, no, it was primarily just the fear of dying every 5 minutes.
That's
and
very
being
reasonable.
presented with some
5 minutes is also
creepy
very
music, creepy
optimistic.
pictures. That stuff gave me nightmares at the time. I used to watch my mom play it, and it would give me horrible nightmares for several days on end. So I wasn't going to get anywhere near that myself. But I remember not long after that, one Christmas, my parents got us a collection of different CD-ROM games, which also included Space Quest 4, which I also didn't play. But also a bunch of other different, but also a bunch of different other games that were interesting in their own right. It was kind of a weird mix because it included Battle Chess of all things.
Yay!
Awesome game. Mm-hmm. Well, shitty game, but awesome game.
Awesome.
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Shitty game, no awesome.
Yeah. I didn't play that either, but Battle Chess, I always loved the original DOS version of Battle Chess just solely for the animations, even if I had no idea how to play it. And the CD-ROM version, was high-res, it had high-quality music and sound effects, so I loved that. Again, I sucked at it, but I just like looking
Battle
at it.
Chess, right? Music?
Yeah, Battle Chess.
This is true. The CD-ROM version of Battle Chess actually streams music off Redbook audio, which means they're just audio tracks on the CD.
Yeah, that was the thing actually that we discovered at the time. You could just put some of these games in a regular audio player, and it would still play, music or audio clips from the game on your CD player. We thought that was awesome at the time.
Just never play track number
Putting in
one.
battle chess, you would hear all the noises from the pieces battling with each other on your audio player. That was
technical
awesome.
time. It's worth noting that a lot of early CD-ROM versions of games, what they actually took advantage of was the fact that a CD-ROM drive can actually stream audio. It can basically act as a programmable but regular CD player. So a lot of early CD-ROM versions of games actually just had kind of pre-recorded, possibly enhanced music tracks that would play kind of offloaded off the CPU by the CD-ROM drive itself. And most CD-ROM drives also had digital to analog converters that you would plug directly into the mixer on your sound card.
Mm-hmm. Didn't they call that Red Book audio?
Pardon?
Didn't they call that Red Book audio?
Red Book audio is the format of how audio is laid out on the actual CD.
Okay.
So yes, I mean it is Red Book audio, but what a lot of early games did was take advantage of the fact that CD-ROMs could play Red Book audio independently of what the actual machine is doing, and the game itself was actually it didn't actually make use of any of the advantages or potential advantages CD-ROMs had. It was just
here's the same game
audio
we can play.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it would offload some stuff off of the CPU and possibly give you better quality audio, which was nice. But a lot of other games actually did a lot of interesting things with CD-ROM. So, we mentioned The Seventh Guest, and that would actually stream video off of the CD, which was no mean feat back in '93.
Revolutionary at the time, yeah.
And we have Rebel Assault, which kind of did the same. But then you had really stupid CD-ROM versions of games like Elite, for instance, which was basically the original version, plus its 5 or 6 translations stuck on a CD-ROM with nothing to kind of differentiate it from the floppy version, which is why we ended up trading it back in for a floppy copy of Laser Squad, which was probably one of the best decisions we ever made.
There you go.
Anecdote.
I remember from Joe's podcast on Loom, which is probably the best comparison here, because I was talking about Day of the Tentacle, and Day of the Tentacle and the games that came after that would play speech and stuff off digital through the sound card. They would stream the speech and sound effects and such, which was why my computer was lagging so much when it was trying to do that off a single speed drive. However, Loom and the first Monkey Island game had CD versions as well, but they used Red Book audio, and Loom is infamous. The CD-ROM version is infamous because they only had like 60 or 70 minutes of audio available because it had to stream off, uncompressed off the CD. So they had to, cut a bunch of dialogue out of the game, and
I just want to point out, because this is a pet peeve of mine, I think the in part of the infamous is only infamous for people like Anatoly Shushkin, who probably everyone in this podcast knows of. He has this huge issue with the floppy version. Yeah, the DOS nostalgic. He has a huge issue with the floppy version. Rather, he prefers the floppy version of Loom. And I agree with some of his insights, but I think actually the CD version of Loom had indeed slightly shorter dialogues in some cases, but it was
slightly.
For most of the game, it was about 90% the length of the original, despite all the limitations. And it just, in my opinion, which is completely diametrically opposite to Anatoly's, it actually improves on a lot of things. So the recorded audio is actually really damn good for Loom. But it's a very contested subject.
The absolutely most perfect version of Loom, as Joe also mentioned in his episode on Loom, is of course the FM Towns version, which has the enhanced graphics, but none of the condensed dialogue, which was famously reduced by famously racist author Orson Scott Card. So screw the CD-ROM version.
Hey, you said screw, so
racist and homophobic.
You can drink on that if you want to.
America is correct, also homophobic.
Yes, yeah. Orson Scott Card is definitely an interesting, not in a good way, guy.
Right.
Shall we say?
Yeah.
So,
And,
anyone else have CD-ROM stories, or?
I have one. If no one else wants to go first, because this is kind of a pickly one.
Sure.
We were talking about piracy. And back in the day, piracy was going over to your friend's house with your disk drive or whatever, and start copying his floppies and such, or meeting up kids in the schoolyard and exchanging floppies. Hey, can I borrow this game and such? CD-ROM burning was well into the future. So when game companies started putting out CD-ROM versions of their games in the early 90s, they would just take the copy protection out completely because, hey, who's going to copy
You
a
can't
CD?
Copy this.
This is completely impossible.
It's
What is this,
600
the
megs.
Yes. So what people would do, at least in Europe, or at least in Denmark, we would get these big ass cardboard releases which had like 8 or 10 CD-ROMs. That my dad would bring home from work. God, I hope his old employer isn't listening to this. He would bring those home from work, and they would have all of these pirated games where the cinematics and the speech had been taken out of them to make them fit on the CDs, but they would have like a bunch of games on them. They were called Frozen. The Frozen CDs are famous in Denmark.
That was
We had something similar to that in the Midlands called Twilight.
Yeah, so that was also for the CD-ROM era. What I remember mostly are mail ordering real CD-ROM games, and then also my dad bringing home these Frozen CDs every month or so with a bunch of new games, and you just sit there and go through them and go. All right.
Frozen was actually just a cracking group. It was a brand, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay.
The terminology normally used is CD rips. And in my opinion, that was actually a really bad period, really bad era for PC gaming, because a lot of people, especially from kind of my generation, which is really your generation as well, sort of experienced a lot of these games without video cutscenes, without music, without speech, and a lot of these games don't work as well without those features. So
This is true. But I will say this in the defense. Because you're absolutely right. If you play like the Orion Conspiracy as a CD rip, at one point the game absolutely breaks because it's supposed to play the cinematic and it never does, and then the game just freezes up on you. But I always use these CD rips as sort of a demo thing.
Right.
Like, am I actually going to order this game or not? Because usually the rolling demos and the playable demos of the early 90s sucked ass. They were not representative of the games at all.
Well, not the early 90s, the mid to late 90s, because the early 90s were mostly shareware, and actually that was kind of possibly the best demo platform for new games.
They worked super well, yeah.
Concede. But I mean, from 94, 95 or so, CD rips were sort of the mainstream of pirated games, which was the mainstream of PC gaming for kids of our give or take age. But that was a shitty time for PC games, I think, because a lot of people just missed out on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because I remember actually talking about Twilight. On one of them was a game called Time Commando. I'm not sure if anyone here knows about that.
I know, it's a good one.
It's an adventure game, I think. Right?
No, it isn't.
No, it's actually more of a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but with full motion video backgrounds, basically, like pre-rendered. Was made by the same guys that did Little Big Adventure.
Yes. Yep. Kind of like
what they did with the CD-RIP version was, because the levels are basically streaming video, is you had the first 2 levels, they were completely untouched, complete, and then after that it would constantly loop the same level over and over again to infinity.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's not good.
So
it definitely would
beat the game.
Yeah, it definitely would give you kind of a skewed view of the game, and if you didn't want to do any more research and figure out what the game was really like, you'd basically be, this thing is awful. I'm gonna play it anyway.
But I did eventually get a retail copy, get the complete game, so.
And it was good, and the full motion video background thing was actually kind of fun. It was a full motion video, as you say, but it would only play when the character moved forward, kind of like in Mega Race, where the entire track is just a full motion video thing, and then you have sprites on top.
Yeah, so the characters were actually real-time polygon models, so that was actually pretty cool at the time as well.
Very cool.
I'm pretty sure this whole technique was sort of pioneered by Rebel Assault back in the day.
Oh god, Rebel
nice
Assault.
reference.
Oh god.
I know this is contested. And probably
So
half
much
the people
pain.
so much pain and so much suffering. And okay, I'm just gonna lay it out there. This game sucks. Okay, this was a shit game.
I will actually say Rebel Assault 2 is a guilty pleasure for me, because we had the LucasArts Archives Volume 1, which had a sort of special edition of Rebel Assault 1, which was just 3 levels, which I never finished because the game was just...
So it's that kind of special. Huh?
Yeah, like short ones special.
Yeah. But I couldn't even get through that because the controls in that game was just horrendous.
Oh, it's painful. So painful.
Years and years later, I got Rebel Assault 2, and it had live actors and awesome cutscenes and all that. And you know, I just loved the shit out of that game. I didn't care it was kind of a shallow rail shooter.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and you know, as I've said over and over again, and at the time, I thought they were incredible, like amazing, beautiful games, and it didn't really dawn on me that they were the most frustrating, unplayable things in the world.
Oh god.
Yeah, I say that, but Rebel Assault 2 gave me so much grief as well, piloting the Corellian freighter through the mines.
Yes.
I still
Wasn't
get
that the Millennium
flashbacks.
Falcon? Sorry? Wasn't it the Millennium Falcon you piloted?
It wasn't actually the Millennium. I thought it was the Millennium Falcon. It said on the back of the box that you got to pilot the Millennium Falcon, but in the game, actually, it's a different Corellian freighter that you find in a Imperial base.
Right, it is
Yeah,
a Corellian
advertising for you as
freighter.
well.
I don't know if that's true or not, but it's worth noting that I would expect it to be a Corellian freighter that you find in the trash heap of a base. Like, I don't know. I could never get to the Rebel Assault 1 was how shall I put this? Frustrating enough and basically just bad enough that I would never, ever, ever even consider putting the money down to get Rebel Assault 2. It was just horrible.
It caused too much pain.
To interject again, sorry, but it is worth noting Rebel Assault 2 is very much worth getting for all of the Easter eggs it contains, because they are absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
I was just going to say that. If you put in a cheat code in Rebel Assault 2 and don't actually have to play the game, the Easter eggs are fantastic, and the FMV is actually fantastic as well, and the mode that you can, the Mystery Science Theater mode
Yeah, exactly.
of that game is just fantastic.
all of the spoken dialogue gets replaced by subtitles, which are just completely nonsensical, but they're absolutely hilarious.
And you can watch it, and you can definitely watch it on YouTube if you don't want to, suffer through playing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a cheat code that just skips all the actual playable bits.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
God, I wish there was a cheat code like that in Seventh Guest.
It exists. It's called that. Well, there is that book which you can.
Which gives you a different ending.
Last
And
one.
most people don't realize that.
But you still have to go through the
Okay.
fucking maze.
Okay, the F word was said.
So there you go.
And B, let's okay, I just want to say this out loud, right? The Seventh Guest is not objectively a very good game, but it just got so many things right, so much ahead of its time that I can't, no matter how frustrating it gets, no matter how fucked up the microphone puzzle can get, the microscope
Yeah.
puzzle can get if you have a machine that's any faster than a 386 DX. I can't be angry with this game because it was so much ahead of its time. I mean, just it came with this VHS tape of the making of the Seventh Guest, which was just completely and utterly unheard of in gaming in general and PC gaming specifically up until that point. I still have that original package. I still have that VHS tape. I captured it to video ages ago, and it's lower quality than what you can find on the internet, so that there's that. But between the actual fact that you could see full screen, full motion video at roughly 24 frames per second on your 386 off of a single speed CD-ROM drive. I mean, that thing was just so freaking ahead of its time. The experience of playing it for the first time, it's kind of like going to the movies and seeing Terminator 2. You know, it's an experience that just stays with you.
Exactly.
Can I jump? Okay, can I jump in here for just a second? Because
are you going to say the F word? Because I need to pour more of this.
Right, no, I'm not going to. But the Seventh Guest actually cheats. It doesn't play full motion video. It puts in and this story will get interesting in a bit. Don't worry. It just displays a static background like a JPEG, and then just has sprites of the full motion video characters on top of it, kind of like what Under Killing Moon does. Just has a backdrop, and then the characters are like blue screened out of it. The story here goes that once they were going to do the 11th Hour, the sequel to the Seventh Guest, they hired this professional movie director. Who, whatever. He turns in the movie that's going to be in the 11th Hour, which I dearly want to show Fred. The house is a rapist. Sorry, just spoiled the game there. Anyway, that was actually done on real sets with, real full screen, full motion video, camera pans and zooms and everything like that. And Graham Devine, who was the lead programmer, sits down and looks at this and was thinking, oh, we can just reuse all the technology from the Seventh Guest, and it's just going to make more money. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be done in 6 months or whatever. He looks at this footage, and the first screen of it, or the first scene of it, is this dude riding on his motorcycle, and trees are flying past in the background, and everything's moving, and he's just sitting there going, there is no way in hell my movie engine can run this.
So the game,
dead.
We are so dead. He has to rewrite the entire movie player engine and has to get it running on the systems of the time. So that game basically requires a 4-speed CD drive. It was delayed years and years, and it runs on DOS. Double, okay, but it runs like ass on a double speed CD drive.
So I'm gonna have to go all pedantic on your ass.
Right.
So first off, it's a double speed CD-ROM requirement for 11. And you're right about the story, by the way, because Graham Devine tells it just like that, pretty much on his I don't know if it's blog or dev diary or whatever. Pretty interesting read.
There was an interview. Yeah,
the thing about full motion video that most people kind of ignore is that full motion video does not necessarily have to be kind of compressed real world video. So in the Seventh Guest, when you move from room to room or anything of the sort, what you get is the whole scene shifts, and that's basically a slightly different form of video compression, but it's in essence the same. So it's slightly lower frame rate because that's what Graham Devine could make of it. But that was so freaking impressive at the time. I mean, just moving around the house and seeing, it's true that the videos were kind of mostly static camera angles superimposed on top of 3D rendered backgrounds, but the 3D rendered backgrounds also animated between one background and the next. So
you're right. I kind of neglected that. But as far as the full motion video goes, for back in the day, shit, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
So just to kind of wrap up this whole point, okay? We can discuss the video and be pedantic and technical about it all day, but to hell with it. The music in the Seventh Guest is just mind-blowing for its time. Okay, between the Seventh Guest and Loom, which also came with the 30-minute audio drama, which I still to this day listen to, and I still to this day feel is a milestone in game production values. Right, between these two things, just the experience of playing the Seventh Guest for the first time was so much ahead of the curve compared to everything that came out that year, with the possible exception of Doom, which was a completely different experience. It's not really comparable. It was just mind-blowing. And just the intro scene when the Trilobite logo comes onto the screen and you get the violins in the background, it was just nothing like that existed in gaming up until that point, with the exception of Laserdisc. And let's face it, Laserdisc was shit.
Yes.
They
Not
were
just
terrible,
because of the
yeah.
format, but because of the content. People generated shitty content for Laserdisc. So
Yeah,
that,
Laserdisc and Sega CD.
Pardon?
Oh, Laserdisc and Sega CD. It was
Well,
kind of
Sega CD was kind of a joke. You could say CDI or in '94, I think maybe 3DO, which actually had some interesting stuff for it. But I mean, the Seventh Guest just, regardless of what you think of it as a game in its own right, it just kind of forced the entire market to, on the one hand, go through this shitty, we gotta have full motion video phase where
Everyone's a movie director now.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and the games that came out between say '94 and '95 typically had just ridiculously bad video. And actually, I credit Bullfrog a lot. We mentioned Dungeon Keeper before. I think Dungeon Keeper was one of the first games to actually have worthwhile full motion video as cutscenes. But regardless, I mean,
Command and Conquer.
Command and Conquer would
Command
be
and Conquer
the other,
was-
even though I thought it was a shitty game. And I can probably get stoned to death for saying that, but
that's a
none of the
different
CNC
chat.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, it was a '93 was a really interesting year for PC gaming between the proliferation of CD-ROMs, the Seventh Guest, Doom. A whole bunch of stuff just happened in '93, and it was just a
Well, you're
fantastic
right.
year to be around.
You're right. It
as a
was
PC
like,
gamer.
how can it get any better than this? And it turns out it couldn't. Then we got
Yeah.
Phantasmagoria, and everything went to shit.
And everything went to hell.
Well,
But
it was actually a pretty good game, ironically.
no.
Well, fair enough.
But anyway, I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation. It's been a while since we've heard from Brian and Amirio. So
This is like
There you
listening
go.
to a live podcast.
It's wonderful.
just sitting here enjoying
There's
the
actually a little thing I wanted to say because Tomer, is his name?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
He reminded me because he was talking about Seventh Guest and Doom. Okay, it wasn't just Sierra that terrified me. There were a lot of things that terrified me as a kid, of course, and I tried to actively avoid anything that I thought was going to be scary. Seventh Guest obviously was one of them because it was, spooky mansion full of ghosts, and
I've intentionally.
I remember. Okay, but my brother brought it home one time. He borrowed it from a friend of his or whatever. He wanted to try it out because he heard it was scary. He was into spooky stuff like that. So I wouldn't go anywhere near it. Afterwards, he was like, "Nah, nothing to it, just a bunch of ghosts." But around the same time, I played Doom, and I didn't bat an eye at it. I love Doom, I still do. But
Well, it's Doom.
it kind of a skewed perspective. Like I wouldn't go anywhere near a Sierra game, but I still played Doom and the like. So I was a bit messed up.
that's a bit weird because Doom freaked the hell out of me, literally, because you literally go to hell. And I've always been very fascinated by depictions of hell. And in the third episode, you got the faces coming out of the walls, the bleeding, oh god, that game freaked the hell out of me.
I just didn't react to that the same way I did to seeing Larry or King Graham get offed. Like I just like Doom. You just had a bunch of guns. You had some awesome monsters to fight, and cool 3D levels to explore. That's all I cared about.
Yeah, and maybe it was that. It was just maybe more a question of presentation. Like, when you die in a Sierra game, you're this character, and, this is you, and you're invested in the character and all this stuff. And in Doom, you're just, you're Doom guy, and it doesn't matter.
You're freaking Rambo.
Yeah, I guess that might have had something to do with it because, like I said, it was in Sierra games the fact that, death scenes were really, presented to you in such an elaborate fashion. Like you saw, a little animation for each of them. Then you get presented with this, boom, status window with, little graphic of how you died and scary music and the narrator making fun of you. And I was like,
exactly. I think the reason was that in Doom you could just press the spacebar, you teleport back in, and off you go. And Sierra games would like parentally berate you "Oh, you stupid idiot! Why did you walk off that cliff?" And you, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir."
Well, that's like I always hated dying in Fallout because the death screen was like this. It was awful.
Yeah, skeletons and
yeah,
squirrels. I hated skulls.
Comparing Doom to Sierra games, which is a very weird kind of comparison to me.
It's a
with
nice
regards
stretch.
to dying.
Like I said, I was a messed up kid. I can't explain it.
Okay, so just putting it out there. Okay, that's also a first, right? Playing Doom for the first time. But beyond that, the whole thing about dying in Doom is, in Doom, the whole action is very visceral, right? You play the Doom guy. I mean, even if it's an anonymous guy and you don't have an emotional connection per se to the character, you're basically living in the skin of the Doom guy. So death sort of comes as no surprise to you if you die in Doom, right? It's the whole thing is one continuous adrenaline rush. So if you're in this huge fight and an enemy kills you, you see it coming. Whereas with Sierra, it's like, okay, I was walking around, and then I clicked this pixel that looks like every other pixel except it's a little gray, and then I died.
Melted or something.
Yeah, because this massive intergalactic beast that spits out acid was waiting for me behind that one specific slightly darker pixel, right? I mean, there's no preparation for it. Whereas with Doom, it's a continuum. You know where you're at. If you're gonna die in Doom, you're already in the middle of a very kind of spectacular combat, right? You're all keyed up, you're geared up to it. You know you could die. That's the whole point of the adrenaline, or rather, that's the whole impetus of the adrenaline rush.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole experience with a Sierra game is vastly different. And I think that's actually, on the old LucasArts kind of design philosophy versus Sierra philosophy debate, I'm squarely with LucasArts on this one because I love a lot of Sierra games, but the fact that just do any random trivial innocuous thing and die 5 times within 1 minute on the same frickin' screen in the game, you're never really ready for it. You open a zipper on the wrong thing, you die. That's
right. And I always kind of found that it doesn't really encourage you to explore and to try things because you just figure, well, I guess I'll say my game.
Well, it certainly didn't do that for me. That's for sure.
Indeed, right. And even worse.
It's funny actually that Tomer should bring up Fate of Atlantis though, because
I think Trolls did it originally,
or someone brought it up.
I did. Anyway, what just happened? Amira, you look like you've seen a ghost.
Everything under control?
I don't know. I just heard a bang somewhere. I don't know what it was. Anyway, as I was saying, so being a youngster, English was my second language, and I wasn't really able to figure out adventure games on my own at the time yet. I mostly played. I loved adventure games, but I couldn't figure them out, so I just used walkthroughs for all of them at the time. But so Fate of Atlantis, I had a walkthrough for it. And it wasn't until way later that I actually found out you could actually die in that game. So when that first happened, I had no idea that was actually possible. And I was like, when that happened, oh my God, LucasArts, you betrayed me. I thought this only happened in Sierra games.
It's one of the rare parts of LucasArts fare where you can actually die. But in their the philosophy still stands. It really kind of telegraphs, okay, you are now in a dangerous situation. Please be careful. It's like a fucking box pops up. Can I read your notes off, Joe? And since we're talking about firsts and we're talking about this kind of segues nicely into my first multiplayer experience.
Sure, let's do that, and then I think we're gonna start wrapping things up a little bit because we're over our time. But let's do one more story, and then I guess we'll.
Because basically, I just wanted to bring up the null modem cable.
Aha!
Because
Doom.
in the olden days when we had Doom, I had my 486 Master PC, like Master Race PC, and we still had my dad's 386 PC. And every once in a while, my friend from school would come over, or just my brother and I would play Doom against each other. But we had no hubs, we had no network cables, so we had the null modem cable. And it was like every time the dude came over and wanted to play Doom, we would have to go in the closet and see where's the null modem cable. And then
Which
we'd
one
hook
is
up.
it?
Yeah, which one is it? And then hook it up to this port, and then play Doom, obviously. And the thing was, of course, that the 486 would run Doom in amazing resolution, and it would sound great, and everyone wanted to play on that machine because the 386 had to run Doom in, less low quality mode, where the screen would I don't know what it actually did, but the pixels
It's
just got
basically
doubled.
halves the resolution.
Yeah, and it still kind of chugged along, so you were at a disadvantage if you were playing on the 386. And
Right.
the rule around the house was that if you lost a match, you'd have to play the next match on the 386.
All right, so you trade off.
Yeah, and nobody wanted to play. Famously, I watched my brother against my friend in a Doom 2 deathmatch on the secret level. The one where the Cyber Demon shows up, and the big ass hall in Doom 2.
Mhm.
And he lost. He was playing on the 386, and he lost 50 to -4. And I was like, "Yo, man, you didn't even get a single shot in." That was one of the all-time greatest ass whoopings of my day.
Well, that's amazing. And
And then later, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna rattle off, and then you guys go ahead, and I'll shut up.
no, go ahead, do your thing.
Later on, we got very much into because we bought a hub. My dad brought home this hub that you could plug AJ45 cables into. Like they look like little phone plugs. So you can plug those into your network card, and then all of a sudden IPX was a thing, and that it kind of spiraled into. First, we would go to my friend's house on every weekend. My brother and I would go, and we would play Doom and Quake and Carmageddon, and they would play StarCraft, and I would fall asleep. And then that would spiral into us going to LAN parties, where there would be 250 or 300 very, very smelly adolescent nerds in a big gym.
Holy shit! You actually had LAN parties with like
We had
250
LAN
people?
parties.
That is
I don't
amazing.
think
We did.
I don't think I could find 250 people in my hometown who could spell out LAN party.
Well, it was Denmark being a very small country, but there was there was like a very nice little LAN, and of course I got well into the dudes who were arranging the LANs, so we would have creative competitions. Those were always fun, and then every once in a while we would play a game, and everyone was always playing some games, so you could just jump into any Quake game you wanted and get your ass handed to you. So there was a whole period of time there where I would go to LAN parties every weekend or so with my big ass cabinet and such. So that was my multi-playing youth.
Awesome.
I just got to
I'm
ask,
just gonna leave it.
null modem cables were mentioned. Has anyone actually played via parallel cable?
No.
No, I never
Yeah,
played
uh,
via parallel cable. I was
No,
always a
but I
modem.
have
I was
very
always
little.
modem.
Yeah, it must be
I
an
have very
Israeli
little
thing.
multiplayer experience as it is, unfortunately. Always really
Yeah.
jealous of the people who could do that sort of thing.
Yeah, for me it was always one-on-one modem play with my friends for multiplayer.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because for some reason, I don't know if it's an Israeli thing or not, but between my friends and I, the small circle of people, like Trolls mentioned 250 people in a LAN party. I would normally be the one organizing the LAN parties, and we were lucky if we had 20 people. And generally speaking, even before it was LAN parties, no one used serial cables in Israel. Among anyone that I know, we all used parallel cables, and then went straight to 10BASE-T networks with the shitty coax cables and terminators and. all that
I
crap.
completely forgot about those. Yeah, we had those to begin with,
Yeah.
with the Terminators. Every time some dude left the party, everyone else would just scramble to their knees and start reconnecting cables. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going home.
That was
Everyone
the
quit their game.
shittiest ever.
Yeah.
And then at some point I got fed up and scrounged up the money and bought an 8-port 10-base-2 hub with basically straight RJ45 connected UDP5 cables. It's like the normal kind of network cables that you can
we know
find.
today, yeah.
And I think that increased the frequency of our LAN parties about 5-fold and decreased the number of issues that we had about 5-fold.
It all
That
just
was a
worked.
huge, yeah. And Blood was our favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of multiplayer first-person shooter. We would basically have Blood and Unreal Tournament and StarCraft parties. But I still prefer Blood to any other multiplayer first-person shooter game out there ever.
We were into Quake and Heretic and Carmageddon, and people would play Warcraft 2 and StarCraft, and I'm terrible at those. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm shutting up.
I wish I could be bothered to figure out how to get those games running and running multiplayer on DOSBox nowadays, because I really want to try that shit out because I never had the chance back then.
Yeah, it's nothing I never actually started to look at. I know one of my friends was starting to look into it at one point, and then I haven't heard about it anymore. So that's definitely something to look into and see how that would work.
What is it? I mean,
sorry, just getting multiplayer games going on DOSBox and.
Oh, right.
I will say, however, I'm sorry, but I will say, however, that once TCP/IP play came into play, I kind of tuned out because playing over the internet is just not as much fun as being able to sit across from someone and shout at them and throw crisps at them, and because the whole energy of a room in a LAN is just people shouting at each other, and but everyone's a friend, of course, and now we have things where people like really badger people and dox them and are just plain mean to each other.
Well, because they're not humans, right? They're just other.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I
humans.
haven't played. I
I
haven't
don't
played
really enjoy
multiplayer.
that either.
yeah. No, it's the same with me, and I guess it's kind of like going to the movies versus watching a movie at home. There's a group experience, and some movies, just like some games, are better suited to that, and others aren't. So
You don't want to watch a movie.
Well, the advantage of watching movies at home, though, is that people don't shout racist or homophobic slurs at you.
true.
So as someone who likes to have the occasional racist or homophobic slur shouted at me during a proper round of a first-person shooter game, that's the aspect of a LAN party I'm missing the most. I mean, you diss everyone around you, or you don't, depending on the kind of flavor of player you are, but it's all in good fun. I mean, you can't really call someone an asshole to his face on the other side of the table and get away with it if you're not having a friendly competition.
Exactly.
So the things trolls describe, which is really just a bunch of actually, we weren't just dudes, which is pretty cool. We actually had a few women kind of interspersed throughout our LAN parties, even though it was a boys' club mostly. But just having a bunch of guys just around the table with their machines just yelling obscenities at each other, like, you fragged me, you asshole, and that's right.
There were girls at the LAN
It's fun.
parties too. Yeah, there were female gamers back in those days. I mean, it wasn't the whole media circus that it turned into. It was just like, did you bring your girlfriend? No, I brought my own PC, motherfucker. So that was always fun, getting your ass handed to you by girls. But, yeah.
There we go. Well, and on that note, I guess we should probably wrap things up since we're over time. But I'm glad you guys are glad to hang out. So I think that went pretty well. How about you guys?
It was fun. It was amazing fun. Thank you so much for having me and tolerating my slurs.
It's all good. All
I
right.
apologize for
Lots of fun, and if someone could shut me up every now and then next time, I think it would go smoother.
Yeah,
Me too. That's what I was trying to say. I apologize for talking over other people or stuff like that.
No, the Hangout etiquette is you just keep talking until you sort of until the baton sort of passes to you. Please, next time we hang out, Amaro, just jump in. Don't.
Yeah.
There are no politeness. It's just okay. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I did try occasionally, so if I had something interesting to say, but you know,
And
Yeah,
Brian,
how
really
often I do this sort of thing.
yeah, and
But you know,
so,
it was good fun doing this with you guys. Bunch of like-minded, you know, hardcore PC gamers.
nerds.
yeah, exactly. So that's a lot of fun. I think we're going to do another one. I think I said with these are going to do we'll do these quarterly. So and maybe in the spring we'll get together, come up with another topic to discuss. Though we kind of still went all over the place, which is awesome. So that's really really great. Thanks everyone. Thanks people for listening. I know a couple people popped in and out, watching here and there. So yeah, I guess that's it. We'll kill the broadcast and we'll wrap up offline. Oh, Troll, you got one more thing?
One thing, I think because Brian kind of got shafted during this whole hangout, I think he should be the one to say goodbye. He needs some time.
But you need to say that like in a deep, sexy voice.
Yeah.
Sign us off, Brian.
He's muted. Someone
Brian,
muted him.
Are you muted somehow? What happened?
Man, I had this great. I did an Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything, and I was muted. Oh man.
Here we go.
I was saying I'll be back next quarter. There you go.
Wonderful.
Ladies
All right.
and gentlemen, this has been an episode of the Upper Memory Block hosted by Joe Mastriani and stuff.
And everybody else. All
Nah,
right.
before
Cheers.
we go, thanks very much for hosting this, Joe. It was a lot of fun, like I said.
Oh,
Looking forward to
I'm
next
glad
time.
I didn't- and-
Thank you
and-
so much. It was a blast.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, keep the
Thanks, guys,
podcast
for
up, man. It's fun.
Yeah, you rock, sir.
Woohoo! Well, thanks guys for coming out, and we'll do this again.